Ultraman Trigger.
Ultraman Trigger 19, What Makes a Savior? Now, this one I kind of have a hard time coming up with some sort of specific way of approaching it because there's so much going on. I feel like I say that every week, but it feels like it gets more and more the case as we get further towards the end of the series. So I'm going to focus on just one aspect I liked and one I disliked, just so I don't talk myself into oblivion. First, the aspect I like, I think the episode did a good job at having these two core character aspects that it wanted to hone in on, and for both of them, I think it did a really good job at exploring with where they're at now. For Carmira, it was focusing on how she's basically been a wreck ever since her chances of bringing back Trigger Dark were foiled by Kengo, and how she's become obsessed with him because he's basically the icon of everything that she can't have, and how she's possibly never going to have Trigger Dark again. Now, this whole thing, it sort of made me realize in retrospect how much her character from the beginning was focused on him, because in the beginning she's all angry and hateful of Trigger, but just beneath the surface there's this level of, oh, I'm mad at you, I know what you did was mad but terrible, but eventually we'll be back to the usual thing again. And as things go forward, we eventually have this moment where we learn of what happened, as Carmira finally gets to that point where she's like, oh yeah, finally I got my baby back, and then suddenly it's all gone. It's all dashed. Everything she was working towards. She was putting on this face of like, yeah, we're this whole like take over the universe or whatever they're doing thing. Yeah, we can still do that. But we gotta get my man's back. We have to get him back first. And then now that that's gone, she's completely like mask off, like, okay guys, sure, fine, whatever, that's all cool. I need some alone time. I gotta process this. It really has a lot more depth than I expected out of the whole dynamic, and it really excites me to see how it's going to look going into the finale. Carmira, just this dynamic she has with Trigger, in that he represents what she wishes she had in her life. Like, he represents the lack of what she wishes she had in her life, and I just think it's really cool that they ended up with this sort of whole dynamic where now I can go back and rewatch the earlier episodes and be like, oh, I see where it was going. I see not just like her direct actions here, but like the mindset she has of like, oh, it'll be worth it if I get him back. And now that she can't, everything's going terrible. And then Yuna, on a smaller note, because I do think that Carmira and her struggle against Trigger, it was the big influential thing that'll go forward. But with Yuna, it sort of felt like the cap off end point of her of the initial struggle with her character, because it reminded me a lot of Kengo's dynamic, with him having to come to terms with the fact that he's not only directly Trigger, but also that he's human, and the unique relationship between these two things. It was something that I think for her, it was her equivalent to that. It was her finally accepting that she's not just Yuzare, but she's Yuna. And it happened in this really great scene with her dad, with this mysterious man who has been behind manipulating all these things lately, including the previous episode, which, like, quick small tangent, I appreciate how that was a super goofy comedic episode, but all of it was building towards this episode being so good. He just had this really great exchange with her. He was like, listen, yeah, you might be all powerful and everything, but like, I forgot to like love you as my daughter and like make sure you were okay in that sense. At least that's like, I say that's what I got from it, but then again, it's more my recollection having just watched it, because I could rewatch that episode 50 times and I'll still end up processing his words in a specific way. But it just was a really nice moment that led to the other thing I'll talk about in a bit. But I just thought that Yuna and Carmira, there are two character moments with Carmira's having to basically just like be like, hey, I don't care about any of this, I just focus on Trigger, and like that causes Hyudram to be like, oh, you can't lead us, you're too obsessed with your boyfriend. And Dargon's just like, oh my god, please, can we stop fighting? We're all evil, terrible people. Can we please stop being so mean to each other? It was a really funny. It was half funny and half like legit gripping stuff. But beyond that, while it's doing all this, it still managed to have enough time and give enough attention to Yuna's story this episode. Now for the one downside this week. Daban has reared his ugly face yet again. we're having another clip show next week. I think it says a lot about this episode and how I enjoyed it that my one complaint is that next week there's less Trigger. Like, that's got to say something about how much I've come around on the show. But yeah, I don't really have a lot to say on the absence of an episode because it's literally the polar opposite of having things to complain about. I can't complain about things in next week's episode because there is no next week's episode. It's clips of like evil Tiga laughing or whatever over a little alien dude being like, "Kids, this is peak fiction," or something like that. Yeah, I'm happy that like the kids in Japan watching Trigger will have this opportunity to be able to witness these older Ultra series. Because that's the thing I really appreciate about Ultraman. It tries a lot to present its older content, not just like bringing back old elements, but presenting the content directly to its younger audience so that they can like engage with the original works themselves instead of just trying to repackage the older works in a new context. I think it really makes it feel, the whole franchise feel a lot more worthwhile, that all these shows, they look at them and are like, you know what, this is still good. You know, it's been 25 years. This show is still good enough to show your kids. So they can appreciate both the new shows with those older elements and characters and all that, or instances like Trigger where it's just directly reworking an older show, and these older Ultra series. And on that note, speaking of fossils, Tiga! Boy howdy, did Ultraman Tiga make his mark on this day. Yeah, friggin' Yuna's dad, he was still feeling like he was all warm and fuzzy on the inside so hard that he manifested friggin' Ultraman Tiga from the proper, I was gonna say the proper, like, true reality, and then I remembered that Tiga itself takes place as an alternate timeline to, like, the prime timeline of Ultraman. So it's just now dawning on me that Trigger is an AU of an AU, and I don't know how to process that. Anyhow, I don't really have a lot to say about Tiga's appearance. I think that it's the sort of thing where people, you know, if you think it too hard, you might be like, this was not up to snuff to what he truly deserved, or he should have been in a better show. And like those comments, they're always stupid to me. You know, it's whatever. It is what it is. I thought that it was a great use of Tiga. I thought it was very hard to have a moment where I think that they could have easily put him into the series and have it feel super, like, perfectly natural. But it definitely felt like it just slotted right into the episode and was, like, a nice way to cap off the Yuzade whole thing from earlier by having this direct connection through her father to this other reality come to fruition by, you know, having the guy show up. So, yeah. Episode's pretty great. Still upset about Daban. I'm gonna become the #1 Daban hater in North America. Watch out. And yeah, love Ultraman. So gonna take you, baby, take me higher. Na 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 na.